Groups, but I am aware of a group that arrived today in the United States. Durko, Ronald Lamola, last night holding a press conference in which he called the United States Refugee Resettlement Program a fast-track immigration program for Afrikaners. The program is not for Afrikaners, number one. The program for South African racial minorities suffering from past racial injustice or having legitimate, genuine fear of future persecution. That's who the program is for. That would include whites, Indians, and coloreds, but apparently he just can't seem to wrap himself around that. You don't have to believe me, folks. Just go to the U.S. Embassy, za.usembassy.gov website. The description of the program, the qualifications, the criteria are right there. They've been there since May 12th. Apparently, the government of South Africa refuses to admit the truth, as does the media in South Africa. But that is the bottom line. It is for racial minorities, not whites, not Afrikaners, not farmers, all of whom would qualify because they're racial minorities. So, this group has arrived in the United States. We're locating in one particular, just waiting to get confirmation. We don't want to endanger their safety in the United States now, and dispersing to the locations where they're going to be in temporary settlement for eventual resettlement there in the United States. Congratulations to that group of people. You know, Lamola said that they weren't refugees under the UN definition, but in fact, he is factually incorrect. They are exactly refugees under the UN definition. People facing persecution for their race is the first thing mentioned under the convention for those folks for refugee status. Simple as that. So one needs only look at the United Nations documents to see the facts and not listen to the propaganda coming out of Durko. So he also said that besides this being a fast-track immigration program for Afrikaners, every bit of that statement was factually a lie. Besides that, he also said that the United States taking privileged Afrikaners is essentially apartheid 2.0. So as if relations between the United States and South Africa aren't frosty enough already, Ronald Lamola once again opens his mouth and sticks his oversized foot in his mouth and calls America an apartheid state. I don't think that's going to go very well in Washington, D.C. It certainly didn't go very well with me. We don't have a system of racial segregation. That was dismantled many decades ago in America. Many decades ago, before I was even born, it was dismantled. In fact, the year that I was born, the civil rights legislation passed that year, just before my birth. So I don't want to hear this nonsense from people who actually pass 145 laws to racially discriminate against South African racial minorities. And you're going to tell me America is apartheid 2.0? No, there's no separate development in America. People can live where they like to live, despite the lies and propaganda of leftist media and academics and the fake legacy media in America. People can live where they want. It's a question of resources. I'd love to live about 2 miles from where I do live, in a place where people have $1.5 million homes. But I'm not wealthy enough to afford that. So I live in a middle-class neighborhood where I can afford to live. My neighbors include Arabs, Muslims, Asians from South Asia, and a lot of white folks. And that's because that's where those folks chose to buy a home. So this apartheid 2.0 nonsense from Ronald Lamola is insulting and counterproductive. You know, at a time when South Africa should be seeking to resolve its differences, which the government of South Africa is creating with Washington, D.C., they intentionally continue to ramp up the rhetoric and insult the United States. Trump has been very generous so far. There's been no actions taken against South Africa other than suspending aid. But frankly, you know, they kept looking a gift horse in the mouth, and they kept whining and attacking America's foreign policy, our friends, our partners, and allies. And as a consequence, Trump turned off the aid. Look, if you're going to call us names, we're not going to give you money. We're not stupid. It's about time. You know, we gave $8.1 billion to fight HIV over a 22-year period. And what do we get for it? The response from the South African government when the aid was cut off is, well, the U.S. aid doesn't really matter. It's only 17% of the money spent on HIV. Really? In the beginning, it was nearly 100%. Because your government under Thabo Mbeki refused to acknowledge HIV. Remember, it was caused by poverty. Poverty causes HIV, and it can be cured by beetroot, according to Dr. Beetroot Moncho, whatever her name is, the one who died, who destroyed her liver because she was an alcoholic and then got a liver transplant and destroyed that one too. Yeah, her idiocy, trained in the Soviet Union, real doctor that was. And then Thabo Mbeki's small-minded, refused to accept the reality that the HIV virus is what causes AIDS. Anyway, lots of people born with HIV unnecessarily in South Africa because he wouldn't let us use the Verapine, which we donated for free. Anyway, so to hear the foreign minister of South Africa insult America after we've generously, the taxpayer, given and given billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars to help South Africa's trade, to stop gender-based violence, to help your education system, to do research universities, basically fund almost all the research in universities because it's all stopped now. The whining and crying from Rhodes and UCT and all the universities about, we have no money, give us $2 billion, give us $2 billion. Well, that's because the US has stopped funding your research and now they need money from elsewhere. And the 17% that we gave, well, after the truth came out, that almost all the surveillance and monitoring programs, which are critically essential for maintaining successful HIV reduction programs and treatment programs, almost all the monitoring and surveillance was paid for by the USAID. Now that money's gone. So the lies that the South Africa's government intentionally insulting America, saying our money wasn't important, it was only 17%, yada, yada, yada. You are digging your own graves here. And calling America apartheid 2.0, wow. I'll tell you what, I think if people want to take lessons in how to fail at diplomacy, you should watch the actions and listen to the comments emanating from the presidency, from the DIRCO, and from senior members of the ANC in South Africa. And you will learn all the steps that you shouldn't take when it comes to diplomatic affairs with foreign nations. What say you folks? Congratulations to those who have achieved succor and safety with their arrival in the United States. I wish you well. And don't sit on your bum, get out there and get a job, start paying taxes. We all do. Cheers.
Creators, I built these 3 apps to run my business just using prompts with base 44.
Something South Africa's government denies. The Afrikaners are descended from Dutch settlers who arrived 4 centuries ago to South Africa and who led the government which brought in apartheid, a racially segregated political system which has led to discrimination against black South Africans, and it's no longer in force. Well, usually it takes years for the US government to process refugee applications, but this group waited only 3 months. Well, our North America correspondent Nomia Iqbal has been speaking to one of those who made the journey.
If you're white, you're wrong in South Africa. You're a land thief, you are a racist. The whole time it's being told, and there is racist white people, plenty of them.
You say you're not a racist white person?
No, not at all. I've got many black friends. I think I've got more African black men as friends, as white friends. I'm tired of being told, just because I'm white, I'm a thief. Just because I'm white, I'm wrong in this. I had nothing to do with apartheid. Nothing.
Is there anything specific that's happened, Charles, that made you think, I've got to get out of here? I've got to leave?
After the death rates and stuff and my machinery being cut up, and I'm still auto-reporting everything to the police, not getting any protection or anything like that. The only thing that's left on my farm is a sign that says mining area. All the fences has been taken off, boom gates has been broken off.
There are voices out there, including the South African president, who has called you cowards.
Yeah.
You've got
the fight, which I will lose now because I'm not going to pay for it. Behind, my car behind, my dogs behind, my mother behind. It is not, I didn't come here somewhere and we will start working. All of us that is there, we know we're going to start here from the bottom because we are the new people here. We're going to start from the bottom.
Do you ever worry that you might be caught up in some big political game here? That you're a pawn somehow?
Yeah, it's a scary thing, but people mustn't think we're just taking advantage of this. We're coming here to make a contribution to the country.
Old tweets of yours have been dug up in which you appear to have made anti-Semitic comments, and so people are questioning, should you be here? What would you say to that?
I would like to...
What would you like to clarify?
I deleted the comment. But I was actually thinking I should have not deleted it. If you can look where I commented on, it was Passover, the Orthodox Jews, and I'm Christian. We're spitting and screaming and bumping Christians walking with the cross. For me as a Christian, that is not acceptable. in Israel, and I went and I said something on Twitter, which I copy and pasted from somebody else's page, because if you go read my post, you'll see it's not the way I write.
So you had quoted someone else. I mean, the quotes.
I copied and pasted it.
The quotes were anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
They said Jews are dangerous people. They're untrustworthy. They're not God's chosen
I was
people.
super angry too.
So you did it out of anger.
Yeah, and I was in hospital at that point of time. I was on morphine, but that's not an excuse. I'm not trying to make an excuse. Even now, if I would see any person going against my religion, I will speak up against it.
You have high hopes being here in America. Is there a part of you that is anxious that it might not work out?
No, to be honest with you, because of my belief, I believe this is God's plan for me.
Luno is celebrating 500 days since receiving its official government license from the government of...
Democracy depends on a free press. Please support our independent journalism at democracynow.org/give.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa says he will meet with President Trump at the White House next week after a group of some 59 Afrikaners arrived in the United States Monday after being granted refugee status. Afrikaners are the white South Africans who ruled the country during apartheid. This comes as the Trump administration has suspended refugee resettlement for almost everyone else in the world. Speaking Monday, Trump claimed white South Africans face racial discrimination, even though the country's white minority still owns the vast majority of farmland decades after the end of apartheid rule. Trump said he's allowing them to come to the United States to escape, quote, genocide.
It's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about, but it's a terrible thing that's taking place, and farmers are being killed. They happen to be white, but whether they're white or black makes no difference to me, but white farmers are being brutally killed, and their land is being confiscated in South Africa.
On Monday, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa refuted Trump's claims that white people are being persecuted in his country, calling it, quote, a completely false narrative. On Tuesday, Ramaphosa recounted a conversation he'd had with Trump about the situation in his country.
I had a conversation with President Trump on the phone, and he said, what's happening down there? And I said, President, what you've been told by those people who are opposed to transformation back home in South Africa is not true. And I added to him, I said, we were well taught by Nelson Mandela and other iconic leaders like Oliver Tambo on how to continue to build a united nation out of the diverse groupings that we have in South Africa. We're the only country on the continent where the colonizers came to stay, and we have never driven them out of our country. So they are staying, and they're making great progress. It's a fringe grouping that does not have a lot of support, that is anti-transformation and anti-change, that would actually prefer to see South Africa going back to apartheid type of policies.
This comes as South African-born Trump advisor and multi-billionaire Elon Musk has also accused South Africa's government of promoting what he calls white genocide. Musk's grandfather moved his family to South Africa after embracing the country's apartheid system.
On Wednesday, Musk's artificial intelligence chatbot, Grok, became a trending topic on X when people tried to use it to answer questions and check facts. And the chatbot added the topic of white genocide in South Africa to its responses, telling users it was, quote, instructed by my creators to accept the genocide, quote, as real and racially motivated, no matter what the question was. For more, we're joined in Cape Town, South Africa by two guests. Herman Wasserman is with us, professor of journalism, director of the Center for Information Integrity in Africa at Stellenbosch University. His new piece for the website Africa is a Country is headlined Trump's Fake Refugees, Wasserman himself is a white South African, an Afrikaner. And Andile Zulu is a political analyst with the Alternative Information and Development Center. His new piece for the website, Africa is a Country, is titled Race, Power, and the Politics of Distraction. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Herman Wasserman, let's begin with you. You are a white South African and you are an Afrikaner. If you can explain, first of all, to the world what exactly that means and what you thought when you heard President Trump charge white genocide in South Africa.
Well, I would say that my first response was one of incredulity, and later met with, I think with disgust even, and just rejection of this notion of a white genocide or whites being persecuted. And I think that view is shared by many others, white South Africans, and certainly the majority of South Africans in the country.
Well, Andile Zulu, if you could also respond to these claims of a white genocide in South Africa and Trump bringing over these 59 Afrikaners to the U.S., and talk about this in the context of this the new law that replaces the 1975 Expropriation Act in South Africa, and explain why that's been so controversial and what it entails.
Well, this accusation of white genocide emanating from the White House is a conspiracy theory and a myth that has been floating around echo chambers of right-wing populists and white nationalists for many decades now, particularly within the online space. And it essentially holds the accusation that white South Africans, in particular Afrikaans South Africans, are victims of deliberate, direct, state-sanctioned violence. And anyone who lives in this country, who's awake to the reality of this country, the inequality, the poverty, the unemployment that most Black South Africans have to endure, and including Indian and colored South Africans as well, knows that it's patently untrue. And the truth, however, is irrelevant to those who are perpetuating this myth. What matters is that it's a means through which you can mobilize anxiety, mobilize fear, and mobilize frustration from a segment, I think a relatively small segment of the population that is dissatisfied with the post-apartheid democracy and the loss of their political elevated status. It's a way in which you can